secret files of Teletraan 2.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Files of Teletraan 2 as we continue the march towards doom. IDW is wrapping up its continuity, and this is just the latest in a series of recordings where I get people on from the wider Transformers community and talk about various aspects of IDW that interest them. Today, we have from All Things Transformers and the Pull Bag and a bunch of other stuff. TFG1Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hello. Yes, I am the co-creator of the Geekcast Radio Network along with Steve Megatron. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I am here at, oh god, it's only 8 in the morning on a Saturday? What the hell? Oh, you can edit around this, or I can edit. Can we curse? I just want to make sure, not that I'm going to, but...
I mean, it's up to you, but fuck.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because usually I end up... Okay, anyway. But yes, I am here. I'm glad to make my debut on Moonbase 2, talking about the best Autobot leader ever.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Every topic is, of course, like... I'm trying to get a sense of, like, the impression IDW's left on people and everything else. But yours is an interesting one, because it's actually spitting out of the wider Transformers fandom. So... what is it? Tell me what we're talking about today.
We are talking about, like I said, the greatest Autobot leader ever, who is Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime. Mm-hmm. While I grew up I was 4 years old when the cartoon debuted in 1984, and I grew up watching and loving Optimus Prime and everything else, and just like everyone else, and I mean, I didn't like hide in my closet until they made him come back as a zombie in Dark Awakening or anything like that. But I did cry, I did have emotions, I was shocked when they did kill him. However, there was this, turbo-revving young punk that kind of, the Matrix chose him. Optimus Prime chose him. And even though he deals with the burdens of leadership not exactly in the best ways, he is the new hot young leader character. So the way I look at it is Optimus Prime is Batman and Rodimus is Nightwing.
So doesn't that technically mean Nightwing's popular, but Batman's still like the Mindmaker?
That's true. But,
because, my God, will DC stop making Batman books for the love of all that's holy?
They will never, because they just won't.
That's too much. They killed Batman for me. Like, absolutely. Basically shot him in the head multiple times, as far as I'm concerned. It's too much. It's absolutely too much. But that's a very different podcast. So... What is it that draws you to Hot Rod or Rodimus or whichever version?
So, it's the same character. Rodimus is just his... I don't want to start this argument because I as of this recording, just rewatched Chris McFeely's Transformers The Basics on Galvatron. And yes, I know, in other continuities, Galvatron was a separate character, blah, blah, blah. But to me... Galvatron will always be Megatron in purple drag, or whatever. So the same thing with Hot Rod / Rodimus is, it's the same character, except the Matrix makes him a leader. And the thing of it is he was, like, I assume when Unicron ate Moonbase 1, bye-bye, Bumblebee, see you later, as much as I love you. Like, you and Spike are gone, and now Hot Rod and Daniel are the new kid-focused characters, even though Hot Rod he wasn't as childlike, like, he was a kid character, but he wasn't as kiddie as, like, Bumblebee. Like, Bumblebee was this wholesome, like, every now and then he may make a mistake kind of thing, or he may rush into battle too soon, or whatever, but he was always that... you could follow him no matter what. And Hot Rod, while he makes some questionable decisions, both in the cartoon and in the comics, he's more of the adult version of what Bumblebee is for kids. But he's still a kid character because he's, if you're gonna ride, Daniel, ride in style. He's that rogue. He's that character that just appealed to me, and I wanted to be like him more than everyone always says. Optimus Prime, he's like my grandfather or my great uncle or whatever. And while you would love to aspire to be what your grandparents or your parents or whomever are, most of the time you don't. I mean, there are plenty of people that do. There are plenty of people that follow in their family's footsteps. But sometimes you just have to break out of the mold and be your own person. And that is what Hot Rod / Rodimus is. Even though he has those hang-ups of how do I live up to Optimus Prime. So
for you, it's more. Who would you say is actually more aspirational between Optimus and Rodimus?
I would say it's aspirational. I would say it's. I don't want to say it's both, but I would say it's both for two separate reasons. Optimus is that leader. He is that, like I said, he's that grandfatherly type character that you always want to emulate. However, the problem with that is that there is no room. Optimus is always going to do the right thing. Optimus is never going to make a questionable choice. And I say that and hear myself saying that thinking, oh, but he played basketball while the Decepticons attacked the City of Steel.
Man needed to dunk.
Yeah, Michael Jordan, he is not. But it's one of those things where you aspire to be like him, but you're never going to be because he has there's no room for error with Optimus. With Hot Rod being the young new leader, there's room for him to grow. And the whole point of, Arise Rodimus Prime is that he's growing up. He's not, Hot Rod is a young, cocky teenager. Rodimus is more like a mid-20s, early 30s, whereas Ultra Magnus is mid-40s. So I would probably put Optimus Prime in his 60s. So it's kind of like an adult, growing into the role kind of thing. So
if I'm thinking about it in Star Trek terms now, Cisco versus, say, Janeway versus Picard, and each of them are very good at what they do, but very different ages, very different. They each represent something very different.
Right? Yeah.
Cisco is the younger guy. He's more willing to ignore the rules and do it his own way. Janeway's experienced. She's a bit of a wild card, but she's also very much tied into those rules. And Picard is the rules. Yeah. Even when he breaks them, he is the rules.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's an interesting idea. I don't see Roddy as the best leader of the franchise. I see Transformers Animated Optimus Prime as the best leader of the franchise, if I'm completely honest. Because I think he took the best elements of both those characters and stuck them into one, while I think avoiding one of the traps certainly early Rodimus fell into, which was just being too much of I am the leader.
Yeah.
The problem with the Matrix for me, this is something where I think the Matrix is a faulty concept, is it is a chosen one narrative. You are the leader because you have been chosen. You're able to beat Darth Vader because you're chosen by the Force. You can take the ring to Mordor because you were chosen. Those scenarios allow individuals to rise to the occasion. Whereas with Animated Optimus, he wasn't chosen. He was actually distinctly unchosen. Yeah. And he was forced into a situation where he had to show that, actually, I would be fantastic at this job. That I personally find way more interesting than either the stoic standing up one or the the chosen one who then displays like he was right to be chosen.
Right.
I like the one who was never chosen and then has to show like you should have picked me.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that. And when I say I'm saying that Hot Rod / Rodimus is the great, I say it snarkily because like just because he's my favorite character doesn't mean overall he is objective. Like, it's a hugely subjective opinion because it's one of those things where this is the character I attached to, even though as a young kid throughout the 80s, yes, I liked Optimus. Yes, I followed what he did in the cartoon and whatever else, but once that movie hit, man, and I saw that movie on VHS, and I think not, because I know I did not see the movie in theaters. I was not one of those kids that got to see the movie in theaters. I remember watching it on VHS in like 87, 88, because you got to remember, kids, back in the 80s, it took anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half for things to go from the theaters to home media. So by 87, I was 7 years old. I was really impressionable. And like I already said, yes, I did cry when Prime died. But by the time, let's say the mid 90s rolled around and I was a teenager, it was more of, oh, yeah, Prime died and that's sad. And oh my God, that's horrible. But here's the new guy who's trying to live up to, like, you got to think about it in Rodimus's viewpoint is, yes, I'm a new young leader and I want to do the best job I can, but I want to do it in, not memoriam, but in the way that Optimus would have, even though he doesn't. He doesn't at all. He makes his own decisions, but he always says, he has this hang up of, how could I ever live up to you, Optimus, kind of thing. And it's just endearing to me.
No, it's an interesting idea. Like you said, it's like he has this pressure on him that very few people in any franchise have. Because very few franchises have a character like Optimus. Not just like this all-encompassing good guy type, because lots of them have that the all-encompassing good guy type who's replaced. Very few ones deal with it. I think it's one of the strongest elements of season 3, which is a pretty up and down season. But like the episodes that do focus in on Rodimus, I do think really develop the character in a way that is not common for 80s cartoons at all. So anyway, we sort of set up the groundwork. We have a man here for whom, he has his golden calf. So my question to you then is, how does that relate to IDW Rodimus, who I would class as a quite distinct character in many ways from the classic one?
Yeah, he is a very distinct character. I love that every character from IDW came from somewhere that we never knew of, or at least I never knew about. Like, you look at his TF wiki page, a turbo revving young punk from Nyan. Well, where the hell is Nyan? So you have to be reading the books to understand, where this is. And where I came in with this was IDW 2.0. Basically, I was told, read The Death of Optimus Prime, and then you have two paths. You can either go with Rodimus and the Lost Light on More Than Meets the Eye, or you can stay on Cybertron and deal with Starscream and all his politicking that he does. I read both series. I covered both series on the pull bag up until the end of Unicron and even past that into what I call IDW 3.0, which is the current phase. After Volume 3, which I think is issues, I don't even know, 11 to 13, 11 to 17, whatever Volume 3 is of the current run with Ruckley, I got so confused, and I haven't read IDW since that podcast I recorded with my buddy Steve Megatron for Volume 3 of the current, but that 2.0, that whole era of More Than Meets the Eye and Robots in Disguise, it was some fun stuff. And again, it's showing you Rodimus in a role that, yes, he is the leader. He doesn't have, to my knowledge, if I remember this right, he doesn't have the Matrix, does he? Because the Matrix, it was a phony, wasn't it?
Well, no. The way it works is Optimus had the Matrix.
Right.
After Mike Costa's event, he used it to defeat the Darkness, which then basically split it in half. And then he gave one half to Bumblebee, and he gave one half to Rodimus, and it contained the supposed map to the Knights of Cybertron.
Right,
and
okay.
Then, obviously, it develops into the Matrix isn't what you think it is, and wrong, and everything else.
Yeah. So basically, he is Hot Rod, he is Rodimus, but it's not because of the fact that he has the Matrix. It's just that he is those characters. And Well,
if I remember right, Rodimus... yeah, Rodimus was a name Swindle gave him.
Okay, well, there you go.
Because Swindle was trying to pull a fast one on... Because Swindle was basically trying to, gather the resources to make Menasor, wasn't he?
Yes,
it was. He was like, hey, you could be Rodimus. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
God, I haven't thought about that story in a long ass time.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where you have leadership thrust upon him, but it's not in the way that it was in the cartoon and in the movie. It's just that who Optimus said, okay, you're going to go, you're going to take this ship and you're going to go and you're going to find the Knights of Cybertron to find Cyber Utopia and save us all. And that's a lot of pressure anyway, but again, like I said, the IDW version of Rodimus is basically the cartoon turned up like... Okay, I'll put it to you this way. You've seen Turtles 2, right? The original 1991 Turtles 2. Okay, so, Mikey's, they're there in the club. Mikey's like, full volume, grab the guitar, and they blow the speakers out. That's what IDW Rodimus is somebody blowing the speakers out in a dance club from a guitar riff. And that's just cool to me because it makes me want to see where that character is going to go.
I've never heard him described that way, but I suppose it is. No, the first thing I want to maybe draw a bit of attention to is the fact that certainly for the first season of More Than Meets the Eye, it would lessen in second season, and Lost Light spends relatively little time with him at all.
Yeah.
There are a couple of scenes with Getaway. And he's not really amazing. You have his kind of introduction in the first arc, of what I like where he is with the whole Getaway thing and the color change, and then he's kind of a lot of the Lost Light crew are sidelined until issue 12, I think it was, and then they're sidelined again until 16, because then we move into the ending arc, and Rodimus has a major role in that, but he's very reactive. But certainly in season 1, it was about highlighting his negative qualities.
Oh yes, very much so.
It is about telling you that this person probably shouldn't be in charge of anyone.
Yeah.
Because he's manipulative, he's lackadaisical, he's thoughtless, he's selfish. He's, I always think back to where he's sitting with Minimus Ambus, and he doesn't know who he is, and he says, I wanted to, when Red Alert blew his head off, I did what I always did. I asked Drift, and then I asked Ultra Magnus, and I did it because usually if you ask that, Magnus will give you one answer, Drift will give you another, and I'll be the deciding vote, which means ultimately I get to do what I want.
Yeah.
And I always think that is summing up the way this character had evolved so hard.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah,
and then the subsequent stuff, the rest of that, we do, he doesn't want to die. Because they destroyed the Matrix half trying to stop, Spiky, the lady, the Statue of Liberty guy.
Yeah,
Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they blew out the Matrix doing that, and he was like, I don't want to die doing this because dying is easy. I want to do effort to make up. And then, while he's still very immature for basically the rest, like right up until the end of Lost Light, he's still very immature in how he interacts with people.
Yeah.
He is definitely being portrayed in more like he gets what his job is now.
Mm-hmm.
And he will always, like, he is trying to help people. He's redirecting the Lost Light to help Cybertronians and non-Cybertronians and organics and everything else. He's keeping an eye on Megatron. He's giving him that one chance. But he's all, like, he's still young. He's still, like, he's the one who walks up to Megatron and says, "You deserve to die, and I'm going to be there to see you get shot in the head."
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have to say that. He said it because he's young and a bit dumb, and said, like, "Oh, well, I'm going to get one in." And he's also the first one at the end who mirrors it, and he says, like, "You're either going to die or they're going to lock you up forever, and you don't deserve those."
Yeah.
Like, which is always really interesting to me. So how do you think, like, again, with that, in an interesting way, actually, Rodimus ties into what I like about Animated Prime, because, again, he's not the chosen one in this. Mm-hmm. Not really. He kind of just took it for himself.
Yeah.
And it was about, for a long time, showing that he was the wrong person for the job, but then ultimately showing that give him the right motivation and he can make something of himself. Which I always thought made the ending of Lost Light, which for all my criticisms of Lost Light, which are pretty significant, I think the last issue is very strong. I always found the way the first duplicate ended up, the one that stayed in our universe.
Right.
The fact that basically once the journey was over, he fell into obscurity. It meant so much to him.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of all that? Like, especially that ending, like that ending they gave him. Do you think that was a good way for, again, it one half the character, because there's another version out having adventures for the rest of time. But what was your thoughts on that?
It seems.
What's your thoughts on, like, before we do that? What's your thoughts on what sort of like that progression from season 1, season 2 to Lost Light, the way the character sort of changes?
What I like about the changes from season 1, season 2, and then into Lost Light is that he always seems to strive to attempt. I don't know if he ever succeeds in doing this, but even though he is a callow and becomes even more callow later of a leader, he strives to at least be the best leader he can be. Whether he ever achieves that in IDW, we can debate all day long. Mm-hmm. But it's those moments. I'm thinking, because I have season 1, season 2 pulled up in front of me, but I'm thinking, it was Brainstorm. With the whole briefcase thing. Don't even get me started. But there was a scene in one of the comics where you see, I have it screen capped somewhere on Facebook, where you see Rodimus do this like multiple panel thing where he's like revealing who Brainstorm is or what Brainstorm's doing, and it's this weird thing with the Autobot symbol, and you see him moving his hands around and things like that, and he's getting even more excited for revealing what should not be revealed. It's that kind of I know it's arrogance on his part, but it's that kind of just childish excitement on his part that makes me think, oh wow, this guy's the leader. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. And for the changes, what I liked was how he changed as a leader once Megatron the Autobot happened. Because I love them as co-leaders. That was fun.
So what about that? What about that sort of spoke to you? What was fun about that?
The reason why Megatron and Rodimus as co-leaders is fun is because Megatron has all this history under him, has all these criminal acts under him, has all this devastation that he went out and caused, and he's trying to make up for that, and the personality clashes between Rodimus being so far over the top and Megatron not wanting to, like... I'm gonna say it like this, and I hope this comes across as good intentioned. Basically, Megatron is Murtaugh and Rodimus is Riggs. Essentially. Like, Megatron is so subtle as Autobot Megatron, whereas it takes Rodimus some time to convince him to do certain things. Like, you know, I don't know. And again, it's something different. It's, you know, when did that happen? Megatron the Autobot was 2015?
2011, 2013, 2014.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just say 2014, because that's a nice round number. It took them 30 years. 30 years! No, and I'm not counting, I'm specifically meaning G1 Megatron. From the original cartoon to now, to 2014. So that does not include, when I'm going to say this does not include Beast Wars.
Yeah.
It took them 30 years for them to give Megatron something that I would be more interested in than just seeing him turned into Galvatron. They made him a friggin' Autobot. They put him in a place that he never wanted to be as a Decepticon leader. Even though he was no longer the leader of, you know, the trial and the this and the that and the whatever, and what's your punishment? Oh, the punishment is going to be he's going to be stuck on the Lost Light with Rodimus and all these Autobots and all these other people. And he rises as Megatron, though. He's like, okay, this is my punishment. I accept my punishment, but also I can look at it as I want to be better. I don't want to be the same vengeful, hateful Decepticon that I used to be. I want to do what is good enough for me and this crew that I am now co-leading with this completely unhinged, you know, fiery red Rodimus thing. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, to be honest. So yeah, they did, like, I always found their dynamic was very interesting, because it both, like, Rodimus was forced into a position where he was always felt he had to watch his back, but because he's Rodimus, he also frequently found himself being childish, and it was about a balancing act at that stage of the story. So what about, like I said, like, that transition? What about when we moved into the Lost Light era, where he went through the color change, and it became about, for him, a bit of revenge? What was your thoughts on that era?
Well, the revenge, I mean, Getaway screwed them all. Like, of course, you know, and again, I look at fiction, or I look at, like, you know, you listen to like a comedy routine, or you watch a comedy routine, or whatever. Say what you will about the man, he's a monster. I fully admit he's a monster, but I still enjoy listening to Bill Cosby himself, which is one of his stand-up things. And in that, he talks about getting revenge. And he talks about somebody hitting him in the face with an ice ball. So Snowball is nice, it's fluffy, it's pure. You throw it at somebody in the face. It might sting a little because it's cold, but it's not going to hurt you. Well, somebody in his childhood grabbed this big giant ice ball and threw it on his head and whatever, and basically injured him. And later on later that summer, he's like, oh, well, I'm going to get revenge. I'm going to get this perfect snowball and I'm going to hit him right in the face. And that didn't work because his mother threw the snowball away. And so the whole thing is, if like with Getaway is the fact that none of the people you think are going to be the ultimate big bad of these comics, that, like, you always, any general person that isn't us, that hasn't been following this franchise for almost 40 years. I mean, I'm 2 years old. I'm 4 years older than when the franchise debuted in '84. But, like, you know, you tell this to somebody like, oh, it's going to be Megatron, it's going to be Galvatron, it's going to be Unicron. And obviously at one point it was Unicron, because they waited 13 years, which is great. You know, you bring Unicron in and then the whole thing just kind of goes off. But with Lost Light, I hooped and hollered at the color. I'm like, yes, they did it. Even though it's him trying to change himself, it's essentially Shattered Glass colors, and I'm like, yes! Because I love... It's the toy. It's that comic from 2008. I love those two things.
Mm-hmm.
And my two favorite colors are black and purple.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm like, oh... And then there's a panel somewhere where somebody tries to insult him by calling him Hot Rod. And it's like after they've shot him or after they've punched him or they've done something to him.
It's a recurring gag.
Yeah, and he goes,
no.
Not Hot Rod, Rodimus. You know, and it's just so fun. And with the revenge aspect of it, like I said, who wouldn't want to get revenge on Getaway? I mean, Getaway's a...
Which then leads into what was your feeling when they did do, they gave him that ending?
Yeah, that ending
after all that.
Yeah, that was, it's a little rough, but, I mean... the whole thing about Rodimus and IDW is that he always wants to do what he can for his crew, no matter how horrible the choice he may have to make. Or how stupid some of the... we know he makes bad decisions. I mean, that's just the fact of life. But you want to follow a character that can learn from those bad decisions. So at the end of it, it's like, okay, where do we go from here? What happens now? How can I strive to be the leader that my crew needs? And again, I think it's also because of the ending and where it goes and whatever. You have, the Megatron thing and everything else, and you have that influence with him. I don't know. It's just a fun character that just seems to be... He got more of a chance to be a leader in IDW because again, I will say this until my dying breath. Comics are the best medium for characters. Because, and for character growth development, even character regression. Because even though Lost Light was only 25 issues, even though not counting the annuals and whatever other specials, More Than Meets the Eye was only 57 issues. That's 50, to me, even though it doesn't take me an hour each, but to me, 57 issues, that's 57 hours of character growth and character exploration for all of those characters, not just Rodimus, but for all of them. Whereas on television or in a movie, you maybe get, let's say, without commercials, 22 minutes, and a movie you get maybe 2.5 hours. I mean, I know movies are running longer nowadays, 3, 4, 5 hours, but back in the 80s, I mean, I think, if I remember this correctly, I could be wrong, but the 86 movie is 86 minutes.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I want to say that's what it is, but, it's one of those things where, I mean...
I know it's only about an hour and a half.
Yeah. I mean, it's... Yeah, so...
85 minutes.
Yeah, so yeah. Okay, well, whatever. But, at 85 minutes, look what they did in 85 minutes. But you compare that to a comic book series that, even though More Than Meets the Eye ended at 57 issues, you have, like I said a second ago, 57 hours you have all this room. So Roberts and Barber, when Barber sometimes may or may not have been writing him, with Roberts has all this time. He has all this space to explore and see how good or bad of a character Rodimus can be. And, like I said, he does do some pretty stupid things, but overall, I think at the end, his crew respects him. And the fact that you get Megatron to eventually respect him, that's like, I mean, Megatron respecting any Autobot, let alone Rodimus, but that's a good character to me. You know, you get him coming from Nyon as this turbo-revving young punk. He turns into an adventurer. He turns into a leader. He turns into a co-captain. He becomes all these things that I just love reading. I love reading his story. And the whole thing, like, James Roberts and all the relationship things that are in the IDW universe, that's fine. I absolutely have zero issue with that. Because, look, these are characters that, like, I could do a whole nother episode on Chrome Dome and Rewind, not that I'm going to, but you take those, or you take Rodimus and Drift, and like you said, a little while ago, he gets an opinion from Drift, he gets an opinion from Ultra Magnus, and then he weighs those two opinions against each other and makes his own choice based on what they've told him, but his own choice might be something completely different from what they've suggested to do. Like, he'll take the advice, he may not always implement it.
But yeah, it's an interesting. He's an interesting character progression. Like, in Transformers, looking again, like, it's the nature of like the long form storytelling. But I can't think of a Transformers leader who's had that specific arc done in that way. Yeah, because usually, like, you're either chosen or you're a new character and you're just made leader for whatever reason. Bumblebee's arc was to show he actually wasn't very good at being a leader. Oh. Windblade's arc might be comparable, but she's a very different character.
And I love Windblade too. Windblade is awesome. I know everyone always goes back to, but she was the fan. I don't care. I don't care if she was a fan vote or not. The reason why I love Windblade is Margaret Scott wrote her in a way that made her... I know she's a city speaker, but to me, she's also the one Autobot, the one Transformer in general that can have a conversation with any Transformer. Like, she can, if people do her wrong, she gets angry, but generally, she's there trying to help. She's there to figure out and do what is best for everybody. And Rodimus, with Rodimus's arc, it's like he goes through all these changes. He isn't just... It isn't just, here, let me stick this in your chest and you're now the leader. That's not what it is. What it is it's, as I said, he grows. He grows and regresses throughout this entire IDW continuity. And sometimes, it's that old saying, you take 2 steps forward, you take 1 step back. And by the end of it, I think he's okay with the life that he led.
No, like, I think it's a good one to say. Like, that's why I always find the Last Light ending interesting, because it's him pining for the life he led. That's the way I always read it. It's like him, like, I was my best self. Yeah. And I've had to live in a world where I'm not my best self anymore. Yeah. Because the world's moved on and it doesn't need someone like that anymore. Yeah. And, like, which is why I'm constantly waiting for some comic company, for some story. It'll be some different company now, but some story to do the crossover with the Lost Light ship that went off in the other universe, because that has got to be a card that they have sitting behind them on a desk, just like, and sales are going down. Boom, there you go.
so yeah, like the whole like James Roberts. I've never had the pleasure of talking to the man. I would love to interview him one of these days.
Huge forums, unreasonably large forums.
I've never had the pleasure of talking to the man, but I would love to eventually pick his brain on what story he would tell, because this man took Transformers and made it so real life. These are characters that not only jump off the page, all of them, not just Rodimus, but the entirety of his run. He made the mind-bending, matrix-twisting things that he did when he was writing this stuff. That whole, the first Lost Light, and now it's the second Lost Light, and it's just, you're right, I am hoping one of these days he gets to come back and create that story of where the first Lost Light, where all that, what happened with that kind of thing. But yeah, Rodimus, he's just that character that when reading him, I started out by reading Spotlight Hot Rod, and in Spotlight Hot Rod, I heard nothing but Judd Nelson in my head. Because, hello, who else are you going to hear in your head? By the time we get to More Than Meets the Eye on Lost Light, I'm kind of hearing Dick Gautier, but it's almost a mix of the two, like, especially sometimes when he talks to himself, because he did talk to himself a few times.
Yeah.
And when he's talking to himself, I'm like, oh, it's the two sides of his coin. It's the Hot Rod side, it's the Rodimus side talking to each other, so, it's just one of those things. When he's trying to be super serious as Rodimus, I hear Gautier in my head. When he's trying to be really, really teenager-ish and callow and all this stuff with everything, I hear Judd Nelson, because that's just the way it is. And the fact that I can hear those voices in a character that I love from somebody who has written this character in a way that I have never thought anyone would write him. Because again, I was a cartoon kid. I wasn't a comic kid. I dabbled in comic books as a kid in the 80s, but I was more about animation and watching stuff on TV and everything else. And by 1987, 1988, there were no more Transformers. There were no more adventures. It's like, when they have to empty the Matrix for the Spore Plague, he's like, he asks, the wisdom of the ages is lost. What do we do now? And then Optimus comes in and says, well, it's our job to fill it up again. We need to be wiser now from this point on. That, to me, is kind of, the ending of the G1 thing, because after that, you don't have anything really. And I don't count. I'm sorry. As much as I know people love it, the Cybernetic Space Cube? Really? Like,
G2.
It's
the only G2.
Yeah, that's the only thing G2 about G2 is literally, okay, you're going to give me this 3D looking Optimus Prime going up against, I think it was a green ramjet or whatever. It's going up against, whatever it is.
Oh, it was purple. It was purple ramjet.
Oh, okay, whatever. So anyway, you got that, and it's a wholly new different animation, and then all of a sudden you go inside of it, and it's like, wait a minute. I'm 11 years old. I saw this when I was 5. Like, this is insane. Like, what's going... Like, and I get it. It was a way for them to do syndication and blah, 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 blah. But, like, there's a finite moment in time from 86 to 87. So he really only got so much. Fast forward almost 30 years, and he gets 57 issues, plus 20. He basically almost gets 75, 80 issues of character exploration, growth, development, regression, anything you want to say about character. Rodimus goes through it all. And at the end, I think he's better for what, like, yes, you're right. He says at the end, like, oh, I'm reminiscing on the life I had or the person I used to be. I would love to be the person I was 4 years ago. I mean, I'm still overall the same guy now, but things have happened to me in the last 4 years that I never thought would happen to me. But they're not going to developmentally change me to the point where I'm a completely... I still have all of the values, all of the this, all of the that. Yes, I've gone through loss recently in the last year or so and whatever, but that loss is as painful and as powerful as that loss is. At heart, I'm still the same person I was as a kid. I still love the things I love. With Rodimus, he, like you said, he does take revenge. He does do questionable things, but does he do things in a way that are going to make him end up being a criminal? No. Just because my wife unexpectedly passed away in November of 2021 doesn't mean I'm all of a sudden going to go out and rob a bank because I need money because she's no longer... You know what I mean? Like, nothing in my life is going to... I'm still going to be the same person. And Rodimus, even though he reflects on who he was, at the end of all of this, he's grown into who he is. He still has that old life, but it's more of, that was my past. I reflect on it. I'm living in the present, and I'm forging my own future.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it.
I mean, that's the only way I can look at it, because, I mean, really... Like, he's just that character that... I know a lot of people want to root for him to lose, or a lot of people want to root for him to not, whatever. For me, it's like, oh, I want to root for him to win. I want to see... I want him to get a happy ending. I want him to not be, not have the burden hardest to bear. But, growing into that leadership role, and again, Robert's throwing twists and turns and changes and things, like I said earlier, with Megatron being the Autobot and the co-captain. IDW Rodimus has things that no other Rodimus has. He has both the knowledge and wisdom of Optimus Prime, and he has the tactics and guff of Megatron. Is he ever going to commit crimes like Megatron did, like I said a second ago? No. But he has the experience of learning from both of them and taking away traits that are completely different that he can meld into his own personality. I just love the character. It's just so fun reading him. I'm glad that I jumped on IDW when I did. And the funny thing is, it wasn't even Rodimus that got me hooked. No, I'm serious. Like, it was not even Rodimus that got me hooked on it. It was the middle of the night on Twitter. Ender used to be on Radio Free Cybertron.
Yes, remember Ender well.
Yes, love Ender. I've recorded
Terrifying
with Ender
man.
a lot. No. He's not that terrifying. Trust me. He's no. I have. It's on Facebook somewhere.
There are so many bodies left in his wake.
Well, he does have a Mattel rant I'll have to play for you later, but that's old hat. Anyway, so Ender one night on Twitter is talking about a certain senator and a certain character, and he mentions, Shadowplay and Impurata, and I'm like, wait, what's that? Because again, favorite color is purple, so one of my favorite Decepticons obviously is going to be Shockwave. And he told me that, and I was like, okay, I gotta go out and get these. That's why I was like, okay, I asked him, I said, again, like I said earlier, where do I start? He said, start at death, and then choose a path, or read them both. And I ended up reading them both. And IDW, what are we at, 17 years now? 2005, 20,
yeah,
22?
the 17-year run.
Yeah. Nobody has done what they've done. And it's a great run. Is there things in the early part of the run that people may or may not like Heart of Darkness or whatever? Yes. There are gonna be great comics, there are gonna be good comics, there are also gonna be bad comics, and there are gonna be comics that you just never want to read again. When they hit 2.0 and they made I love Bumblebee in Robots in Disguise. I think I think that was a fun, interesting thing that they did with him. I sort of like Starscream. Not really, but I sort of do.
I think you're supposed to understand Starscream. I'm always worried when someone says they like Starscream.
Well,
because I think you're supposed to understand Starscream a bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway,
ahead,
I'm very aware of time at the moment. But
no, I'm okay. But
yeah, I've got to head away, to be honest. But I gotta remember to cut that one out. But so that leads us. I think this has been fantastic. Completely, this is one of the best analysis I've heard of this character in a long ass time. So well done there. But we have 2 questions we ask at the end of this. First one is: you are dropped into a situation where you can talk to the people behind IDW. At the end of this run, after end of 17 years, what do you want to say to them?
First of all, I want to thank them. Second of all, I want to ask them why. Why can't we just continue? Bring back, do this, do that. Like what? Like it's more of asking Hasbro, but at the end of it, I just want to thank them because this has been the greatest Transformers character run ever. Like I said, there may be issues where we're not into it, or we don't like the art, or whatever, but if you look at the overall story for both series, both in More Than Meets the Eye, Robots in Disguise, and Lost Light and Optimus Prime, it's superbly done. And every writer, every artist, anyone that's done a cover, because most of the time comic companies will have and we already know this. I know you got to go. The thing, you have Alex on art, but you may have somebody else do. You always have at least 7 to 10 artists do alternate covers and things, and they do things without IDW, I would have never known about Livio Remendelli. Never known about. I love his art style. Anytime you go into Cybertron's past, I'm like, okay, that's Livio. Easily. Hands down. You automatically know. So yeah, I would just want to thank them and just thank them, really, because this has been an amazing, amazing run.
In that case, that leads into the second question. Whatever company get it, we've all heard the rumors about who's getting it, but it could be anyone, really, in the end of the day.
Yeah.
Whoever gets it, if you're put in a situation you can say anything you want to them, what do you say to them?
Well, first of all, I don't know who's going to get it. Nobody does. There hasn't been an announcement yet. Whatever. We've all heard the Skybound rumors. We've all heard other rumors. I have this notion in the back of my head, and I know this will never happen, but I kind of want DC to get it because I think that would be a huge coin flip. Marvel had it years ago. And if DC had it now, I don't know what they would do with it, but what I would say to whichever company gets the Transformers comic book license, write stories that are character driven. Don't just, oh, well, Hasbro has a new fossilizer that we have to incorporate, so let's put, tiny bones on Grimlock's head. Don't do that. Don't. Like, yes, I know it's Hasbro's overall property, and Hasbro, says things to the company. Like, I can't believe what James Roberts got away with that entire story. Seriously, like, that entire story. So yeah, for whoever gets it next, write it for the characters. Make it feel like we are with the characters, because that's what IDW did. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know what characters they're going to want to use. Whatever you do, just don't have Megatron strangle holding Rodimus, please. Because Megatron pulled the trigger, we all know. Wasn't like Hot Rod's hand was on Megatron's hand and then oops.
Did you read what was it called again? The one book by Brandon Easton.
Oh, the Deviations, yes. No.
He's not a fan, did you know that?
I know.
He's not. I'm not a fan of his writing in general, but he's not a fan of. I'm terrified. He's taking over some books soon, and I'm just like, oh god. But yeah, I remember distinctly, like he doesn't like season 3 or anything like that, and it's just like the whole thing is basically kind of a kick in the teeth for anyone who does.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting what he did with his. And again, it was called Deviations. It was from 2016, I believe, and it was basically what if Optimus didn't die kind of thing. And he had some interesting ideas in there that I might want to revisit just to remind myself what they are. But, the only thing I remember is Supreme Starscream or something, and I was like, wait a minute.
I'm always into weird shit like that, but
yeah.
Mega Scream.
That's what it was. Yeah, and look, you know what? Not everyone is going to be a fan of every character. Like, not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not gonna be a thing. And, that's okay. Like, write the characters you like, or write the characters that you want to write, and that'll be fine. But if Hasbro says, okay, we would like you to use this character, and you can do this with him, this with him, this with him, that's fine. But if you don't like the character, you shouldn't. That's the thing with me. If I try my best not to do negative podcasts to tear things down. Like, yes, I can analyze it and say, I don't like this or I don't like that. There were plenty of times in the IDW More Than Meets the Eye run where I'm just like, this art's a little off to me. This doesn't look right. This kind of takes me... The one big thing that I'll say right now that took me out of the book, anytime they time traveled, because it would jigger between present, past, and it was too much jumping around. That's what I don't like in any comic, not just IDW specifically, but I mean, overall, I'm one of those types of people that I tend to talk about things that I love, and I kind of keep it simple, and this is why I love this character. It's because I want to aspire to have some of this character's qualities. Like, I would love to have all the wisdom in the world of Optimus Prime, but at the same time, I still want to be able to go out and jump off of my patio or something, and my patio's on the first floor. Well, my patio's on the first floor, so...
You could be playing basketball as Optimus Prime.
No. Never.
You could be earning the dunks.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that I like what I like, and I'm fine with that. And I fully believe that there is no right or wrong opinion. I have my opinion, the other person has their opinion. If we don't agree, let's find something else we can talk about that we do agree upon. Like, opinions are not right or wrong. They're just opinions. So opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So, this has been a blast, sir. Thank you for having me here on Moonbase 2.
It's been a long time coming.
Absolutely. I wish the quarters weren't so cramped, but, you know, I mean...
Oh, dear. I wish the sun would go away, but we can't have everything.
God. I am right there with you. If I could have perpetual winter all year long, I would love it.
So, as always, we're wrapping up. Is there anything you want to advertise or put forward or anything like that? Sort of let people know where you are, what you do, and how you do, and everything else.
All right. Well, I am TFG1Mike. I am the co-creator of the Geekcast Radio Network, along with my buddy Steve Megatron. We also have a bunch of other people that do stuff on the network. Our website is geekcastradio.com. You can find me on so I'm pretty much only on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook and Instagram, I believe, is TFG1Mike Presents, all one word. Twitter is at TFG1Mike. I've been podcasting for coming up on 14 years this December, and I have probably recorded over 4,000 hours, or over 4,000 episodes. I've probably released over 3,000 episodes over the years, covering various things, not just Transformers, from Transformers to comics to cartoons to any kind of geeky thing you can think of. And all of that content is at geekcastradio.com.
Excellent. So, guys, check out Geekcast. There are loads of show on there. I listen to them quite frequently, and it is worth your time. I would especially go back to the 100 Transformers, the best 100 Transformers one they did, which was really, really interesting. Wrong one won. But yeah, we of course will be back with the next one of these, whoever is going to be on these. If you want to send us any messages, it's to moonbase2@gmail.com, or on Twitter and Moonbase2, or on Facebook, or on Libsyn, or everything like that. If you want to do Patreon and get shows like this 1 month early, and get our woo-woos, and get any interviews we do a bit early, you can do that on Patreon, to Moonbase2 on patreon.com at just $2 a month. Ain't gonna sink the boat. And if not, and you just want to listen and say, well done, send us a message. Mike, thank you so much, and yeah, we'll talk to you all again. Bye!
Till all are one.
You are now